Hey everybody. I think we're live. I don't know.
We are.
We are. That's what happens when you're 58 years old and you're trying to adjust to all this stuff. So, Casey and I thought it would be fun to do these impromptu live YouTube videos with you guys because we did one a couple days ago and there were a lot of questions that people had in the comments. And we thought it would just be fun to get on and chat and talk about it and see if we could be supportive in any way. So, Case, what was the one question that really stood out?
So this was a common question, and just a reminder to everyone, we're figuring this out as we're talking about it. So this is a take it or leave it. We don't have the answer for the end, but this seems to be something that people struggle with, which is they're in their evolution path, but they live with people, whether it's their spouse, their parents, their adult children, who are have, let's say this person said big egos or are overpowering, and it's hard for them as sensitive empaths in that environment to continue their evolution. Because if it was a friend, they could just walk away. But since it's family and it's the people that they live with, it's not as possible and they feel stuck. And I know a lot of people feel this way of like, I'm into all this spiritual stuff, but my husband doesn't get it, or my kids don't get it, and all this and everything, and people can feel isolated. And so that's kind of what we wanted to cover here today and just give our own thoughts and experience on that. I thought we might start with you pulling some cards.
Yeah, I pulled one card that came up was absolutely kind of perfect, as always, and it was the Starseed Origin Code. And what this card is about is recognizing being a starseed. And some people identify as a starseed or as a light worker. And sometimes that can be a lonely path. It talks about that quite a bit here on this card because they may feel a little bit different than everybody else, as if they don't fully blend in 3D to the norm reality. And there's this sense of isolation. And yet, as a star seed, if you are willing to open up, usually you can begin to find other people in your life that are vibrating at that same frequency in other spiritual communities, wherever that might be, however that might show up for you. Like we have that obviously in our spiritual community. And you can come together in community, in collaboration, in conversation, and get that connection that you're seeking, and simultaneously hold, as Raphael always saying, hold the vision, right, for 5D, be able to drop back into that other world that you have with your family or your friends or social situation and just hold the higher frequencies that an empath, a starseed, a light worker would hold, while also maintaining a very normal 3D life, dropping your kids off at soccer, going to a wedding, talking about what you do, where you live, all those normal things that people talk about in social settings or in your family, day-to-day activities, but doing it from the highest vibration possible and not necessarily having this need for them to understand you or to get what you're doing or for you to convert them into what you're doing or explain what you're doing, just to be present in who you are to the best of your capacity with that without necessarily a need for them to be other than how they are.
Right. And so, an interesting thing that you brought up there is allowing them to be how they are and trusting that however they are showing up is absolutely perfect, or else they wouldn't be showing up that way. And the question then becomes, instead of seeing this as an obstacle to your evolution, how can this be an opportunity to expand your bandwidth for whatever you're evolving towards? So, we talked about the situation of like you're in the car with someone and they're really angry and you want to feel peaceful, so you can try and make them less angry, which just ends up in a cycle of you know, continual chaos and stress, rather than how can I increase my capacity to experience peace in the face of whatever is in front of me? How can I nurture the people in front of me who are suffering without having to project onto them A bubble just popped out of thin air. It might have been spit. How do I, without projecting onto them my current experience, right? Does that
Right.
make sense?
Yeah, and it's a fine switch, but it's a super important one. And so we're only can be responsible for our reaction in any given situation and the vibration that we're holding. And I think often I hear this a lot in our community, or people are like, oh, I'm evolving and I'm ascending and I'm in 5D and I'm having these experiences and I want to share it with those I love or my husband or my sibling or whatever. And they just don't get it. Or, I can't share it with them because they'll think I'm crazy or it's not appropriate or like I'm in the closet with my spirituality. But we don't have to we don't have to share all those things. We can just like take that vibration and expand it and emanate it out and just be totally present with wherever they are. And as you're saying, like in the car, expand the peace, hold the peace in your own vibration, regardless of what's happening around you. And then they start to feel that, it starts to create a shift.
Right, and we don't have to share things with them, right? It's not my spirituality is not my identity, and if they don't, right, and so that doesn't if they don't see that aspect of me, that doesn't mean that they don't see me. They just see the aspect of me that they can see, which is all they can do anyway. And
I
I can only
love
see the
that.
aspect of them that they can see. And so my quest as a spiritual person is to see as many aspects of them as I can. And what they see in me doesn't matter because the more aspects of them that I see is the reflection that I was looking for in the first place to understand myself in a deeper way. I don't need them to get to see these aspects of me, but because they're not capable of seeing them because they haven't seen them in themselves.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So the more we can hold the spaciousness to see within them parts that perhaps we weren't looking for or seeing before, the wider the lens gets, the easier the reflection becomes, and perhaps not doing it for that purpose, they're able to see pieces in us that we felt were not acceptable or couldn't be seen.
Right. And whether they're able to see it or not is irrelevant. That isn't the point.
Exactly.
Right? The point is to express this as much light as we can forward and see the reflection of that light in everything that is around us. So the question is when this person is struggling or caught in anger or rigid thinking or a social construct or whatever it is, the question is how can I see the essence beyond the character and magnify the divinity of this person in this struggle?
In this moment without being triggered. So how can you move past their personality matrix into their essence? And what frequency does one need to be at? Not to get triggered in any current situation, but be able to hold it, right? That higher
Right,
vibration of peace within ourselves that then becomes a mirrored reflection in the interaction with them, and the energy then shifts. Because what
right.
happens is if you're with somebody and they're having a meltdown or they're super angry about something, and then you get in and try to fix it, you're just amplifying that vibration. But if you're holding a higher one, eventually the anger can't exist within that higher bandwidth and it becomes enfolded within the higher frequency.
In a way. And so a concrete example of this is let's say I I feel like I can't post spiritual things on Instagram because other people will comment negative things.
Mm,
Right? It's the exact same thing. Well, it's easy to talk about spirituality in the spiritual community, but on Instagram, it's there and I can't just block everyone, right?
right.
Let's use this as the analogy. What do we do? Well, we have to realize that I am not my Instagram account and they are not their Instagram account that is commenting on my Instagram account. We are the people operating the Instagram account. But that's just one level. Let's get even more meta. Our egos are just accounts that our essences are operating to explore human consciousness. just like our Instagram accounts are, aspects of our consciousness that we're using to explore another dimension of consciousness,
Mm.
right? And so, just the same way that I can remove myself and realize the comment on that Instagram post isn't actually a threat to me. That's not what this is about. It's not about everybody perceiving it this way. It's about me creatively expressing the truth of who I am and allowing that to serve others and getting feedback. And if the feedback is something that I should change, I will. And if the feedback isn't in alignment with my value system, then I won't change it because that is distorted feedback. And so
Mm.
it's being able to discern between value aligned feedback and distorted feedback in order to continue moving the mission of your expression forward. But you have
Mm.
to separate yourself and realize that these distorted opinions about your Instagram account aren't actually harming you. They're they're not because you are not your Instagram account and you are not your ego, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's asking ourselves, how do we get into that mindset and that space where we're really removed enough and looking at it from a larger perspective in that higher frequency and that lens so that we don't get caught in those narratives and it doesn't become something that affects us on an emotional level.
Right. Well, it's all about what you're allowing your consciousness to fuse with. So,
Mm.
experiential fusion. When I watch a movie, I experience the emotions of the people in the movie and I lose consciousness of the room around me, right? And
Mhm.
my heartbeat might go up, I might cry, I might laugh. It has nothing that is to do with what's going on in my reality. My consciousness is fused. I have an experiential fusion with that movie. And I'm having an experiential fusion with the movie of my ego. And so
Mhm.
just the same way as I'm aware now focus on different things to tune out of that movie, focus on my girlfriend bringing me popcorn or, my hand on her leg or whatever it is, like the moment, then I can observe the movie and then I can reflect on the movie and then make a decision about what's going on there. And it's the same thing with Instagram. Is I just need to fuse my consciousness instead of with Instagram with the birds, the clouds, the presence of divinity all around us through the air, right? And my breath, and I remove from that. And I allow like so the question is, what are you allowing your consciousness to fuse to?
So if we come back to the original question was, how do I cope with being on an evolutionary journey, moving through the ascension process, waking up and having people all around me who are not on that same path, who are pretty ego based in separation, deeply embedded in 3D, how there's a feeling of loneliness, right, in that for people. So how do they merge their consciousness or infuse it with these higher frequencies and simultaneously be able to navigate their regular life?
Well, time out. Let's just look at what loneliness is. Loneliness is the absence of connection. And so the question is, where are you facilitating disconnection by holding on to stories or beliefs? And
Mm.
how can you change the stories and beliefs to facilitate connection? For example, if they don't want to talk about what I want to talk about, we can't be connected.
Mm.
Now you're going to be lonely.
Right. So the question is what is the definition of connection? And does the connection have to be in relationship to the spiritual aspect of self? But like you're saying, can they find deep, meaningful connection in other ways? And then are there other places where that connection can be fused and can be fulfilled in spiritual communities, etc.?
Right. And so
Doesn't
when
have
you
to be an all or nothing thing.
Right, but when you find connection in everything and you're grateful for all the connections you have, you receive more connections that are more meaningful, right? It's just like abundance. The more I focus on what I do have and how grateful for what I am that I do have, the more abundance I have. And it'd be the same in the abundance of connection. The more like I can feel connected to this person and just because they're not talking about spiritual things doesn't mean that the thing that they are contemplating isn't spiritual.
Right, or that there isn't really deep, meaningful connection if you can find that there, because there can be. It's just a different lens in which they're operating in order to have their spiritual experience, but it doesn't have to be the same. And it's also so important. I think people often will be like, well, I'm awake and I'm on the ascension path, and they're just so stuck in their 3-day world. Well, that judgment of placing hierarchy of one being greater or less than in their human experience and evolutionary process in itself is just showing how much is needed on a growth level for those who are thinking that way. Because when you reach a certain space, you're not judging them at all for wherever they are or however that's showing up, because we don't know. They may be holding a super high vibration by being deeply embedded in a 3D experience.
Right, and your judgment then will bring your awareness to the judgment others have towards you.
Exactly. One big, huge mirror.
One big loop. And when you no longer are judging, right? It's
Hmm.
not that their judgments will disappear. It just won't be in your focus,
Yeah,
right? Because your focus will be on the connection, and their judgment won't feel like a judgment. It will feel like an interesting observation that you can get more curious about, that will lead to further evolution, deeper connection, etc.
exactly. Well, it's something to think about for sure, and hopefully supportive for others. So, what's another comment that's they had somebody had, and
Somebody talked about how they feel that I don't
oh,
know.
they had a hard time with their frequency, I think, when they focus on the disasters in the
Yeah,
world.
that was it. That was it.
Yeah. So let me pull some cards on that. I mean, that's super common right now. There's a lot going on the planet, right? That's pretty intense. Um, how interesting. Unity comes up. Hmm.
Right, because like an interesting thing that I was thinking of is that, if you do the muscle testing, the more in alignment with truth something is, the stronger you'll be. And the thing that is in alignment with not truth or fragmentation, I would say, the weaker you'll be. And it might not be the fact of the event that they're predicting, but the fear around what they're saying that makes you feel weak, or the fear that's coming up in you about what they're saying that makes you feel weak.
Yeah.
But yeah,
And it's a huge thing. I mean, so many videos want to put something up about like the end of the world or some catastrophe is about to happen. And people really feed on that fear, and we have to use discernment, right? But what happens is once you get caught in that loop, you're in that algorithm, and everything just keeps coming up, coming up, coming up, and then the fear starts building, and then the scarcity starts arising, and the panic starts happening, and you can really very rapidly go down that pathway by just simply giving it the tiniest bit of attention. I mean, it has a lot of momentum and potential to expand. And so
right.
it really requires diligence and discipline in disengaging from those scenarios, from that content, from that information, from that panic, from that worry, from that fear frequency, in order to, as this card came up, maintain the ascension timeline.
Right. And then the same question can come if it's still there and you want to contemplate it, ask yourself the question, well, if that happened, how would that contribute to my evolution?
I love that. Yeah.
Right? And how would that contribute to the evolution of humanity? And contemplate that because you'll always get the answer to the questions you ask. And when you realize those answers of if the whole grid went down and I didn't have access to this and there was no money, how would that contribute to my evolution and the evolution of humanity? It becomes something that isn't scary anymore. It's just something interesting. And then you're not attracted to it anymore because you don't care. Because if that happens, great, then I'm going to evolve. And if that happens, great, I'm going to evolve this way. And if that happens, great, I'm going to evolve another way. Right? And so you just ask the question that you're looking for because everything is an opportunity for evolution because that's the game we're playing here. The game of evolving.
Exactly. And that takes all the fear away because whatever is going to happen and however it's going to unfold is absolutely divinely perfect for whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever timeline at any given moment. And worrying and fretting and fearing and trying to figure it out isn't going to do anything other than pull you out of the higher frequency which you can be in this now moment to experience bliss and beauty wherever it is that you are.
Right? Because we're never going to figure it out. Right? You can never predict it. You're never going to figure out the solution. The only thing that you can do is set an intention and make decisions to the best of your capacity that are in alignment with your values and in that intention and surrender the rest to a higher power.
I think that's a beautiful note to stop at.
All right. Awesome. So if you have more comments or questions, just put them in and we'll look at them and if they're good ones, we'll do another live together.
Yeah, so these are just spontaneous fun pop-ins that'll be on the live section in the YouTube just because. And otherwise, we'll see you guys tomorrow, Wednesday at 3 o'clock, where I'll be channeling the Angel Raphael, and you get an opportunity, everyone and anyone on Zoom to ask Raphael whatever you want. So we'll see you tomorrow at 3.
Awesome. Love, love, love.
Love, love, love. Bye, Henny.